Yes, I think we were talking about just basically, specifically during the debate, he kept talking about, well, we can't stop the comeback or the revival. But from what I can tell, that revival has been pretty jaded for a certain swath of Buffalo.
Yeah, we don't want to stop development. We want development without displacement. In the words of my good friends from Oakland, California, change is inevitable and justice is not. So while we know that neighborhoods are inevitably going to change, we want to mitigate the negative impacts. And that means that we're creating truly affordable housing. That means that we're creating opportunities for home ownership for low to moderate income families. That means that legacy homeowners who are facing unprecedented increases in property values and taxes are going to be protected, and that on their limited incomes, they're not going to lose their homes because they're not going to be able to afford the increase in their tax liability.
Right. And, nationally, I mean, you got big pharma, the fossil fuel companies, big banks, military industrial complex. On the local level, you got some of that, but real estate kind of owns this town. I was just reading, I mean, since he lost, again, he lost, the mayor lost to India Walton, but he's doing a write in campaign, and there was this whole corrupt attempt to be on the ballot under a brand new party that fortunately got struck down. But he's always gotten a whole lot of money from real estate because he's essentially given away the farm to real estate.
Mm-hmm.
I know you're not trying to be combative, you're not against development, but he's basically sold off parts of the city to real estate who have then, paid for his campaigns or what have you. Can you kind of talk about, what are the shifts you want to make? Because bars, restaurants are good, but not if the rest of the city is left to rot.
Exactly. It's been widely reported about the current administration's relationship with the big developers who are his primary campaign donors. A lot of these relationships result in no bid contracts with the city, and the misuse and abuse of the 485A tax abatement program, where the program is intended for adaptive reuse projects that include housing units, but we're seeing this be used, and there's no housing created. So I think that the difference in a Walton administration is that we're going to prioritize smaller scale development, and it's going to be a fair process. We're going to give city contracts for development. We're going to use dollars that are intended to serve poor communities to serve poor communities, right? When we've seen folks skirt the law to be able to extract from our communities and use dollars that are supposed to be dedicated to creating affordable housing to do otherwise, and we're going to make sure that that no longer is the case.
And also, he was really drilling in on you, trying to claim you don't have experience, what have you. But I mean, from what I could tell, he's been in for almost parts of 2 decades. I mean, the crime rate has gone up significantly. I think Buffalo has a 30% poverty rate.
Mm-hmm.
And, frankly, other than that renewal that he's talking about, this is one of the poorest cities for its size in the country. So I don't really know. I mean, the media here, there's only one real media outlet. But from what I've seen, just in brief research, they don't really get into any of that. But they kind of just his campaign slogan. But it doesn't seem like he's been super successful if poverty is the way it is or crime is the way it is.
I mean, one could argue that the renaissance that has benefited the elite and the wealthy of this community is enough, and we just need more time for it to trickle down. But when you talk to people who are working every day, when you talk to people who are still struggling to make ends meet, when you speak to folks who've had their small businesses shutter as a result of the pandemic, they're not feeling like they're enjoying in that renaissance. What are we doing for the little guy who tends to be the majority of us in Buffalo? Buffalo is, like you said, the third poorest city of its size in the nation. So it's not as if all of us are chilling on our boats on the weekend. Most of us are hardworking, blue collar union members, who are working hard and bringing home less of our money, spending more on housing, spending more on food. We've not seen wages keep up with the rates of inflation. We've not seen good quality jobs being generated out of this administration. And, I want everyone to enjoy a high standard of living and the quality of life that all people who live in Buffalo deserve.
And the media, they really seize on the term socialism. I mean, if socialism means actually not being corrupt, I'm a socialist. But I wanted to ask you, bigger picture, you get these political slogans like Build Back Better, Make America Great. I mean, whatever. I mean, this is a local election, but it seems to me it's all the same story. You have politicians, Democrats have kind of sounded nicer while screwing the working class. Republicans are pretty open that that's what they're about, tossed in with a little, cultural conservative sprinkles. But I wanted to ask you, how is it running as a Democrat? I mean, you've gotten the endorsements, Schumer, Kirsten Gillibrand, the Erie County Democratic Party endorsed you. When you've been open that, the Democratic Party has been failing in many ways.
Yeah, I think that you touched on a lot of good points, right? Like, if I am running as a Democrat, which I am, been a Democrat my whole life, always vote blue no matter who. But if I'm running as a Democrat against a Democrat in a primary election, what separates me from the status quo? Right? We've been under Democratic leadership for the last 16 years. We've not seen any improvements in the material conditions of everyday working class people. And democratic socialism is a term that embodies the values of my personal beliefs, but also of my campaign, that prioritizes working class people, that prioritizes, clean air to breathe, clean water to drink, affordable housing, quality education, healthcare for all. Those are the things that everyday Buffalonians, New Yorkers, Americans really want. And we've not seen that from our corporate Democrats. So in an effort to stand out from the crowd, I wanted to make sure that I evoked a sense of curiosity in people who would say, well, what does she mean by being a democratic socialist? And I also knew that my opponent would try and take that and twist it. But my job, my responsibility is to say, hey, socialism saved us in the pandemic. We got SNAP benefits for families with children. Everyone was able to get immunization. We got economic stimulus checks to help us weather the storm. I mean, I am a FDR Democrat. So, I think that we've done a good job of telling the story of what it means to have a government that works on behalf of the people, and that is not always extracting from and exploiting communities, but is investing in communities where it matters most, and that's at the neighborhood and ground level.
I wanted to ask you about Buffalo because we're seeing this strike wave all over. I just came from Iowa with the John Deere strikes, but Buffalo, you got Starbucks workers trying to unionize here. Starbucks has brought in the heavy guns. They're bringing in senior executives. I think Howard Schultz, the chairman, came down here for listening sessions, i.e. propaganda sessions. You have the hospital workers, 2,000 workers at Mercy Hospital are striking. And Buffalo, New York in general, does have, our percentage of unionization, it's still low relative to the 50s and 60s, but New York has decent labor laws, decent union rate. Can you kind of talk about Buffalo in general? Because there definitely are conservative parts, but it does seem like there is kind of this worker, I don't know how you would phrase it, but the workers are waking up and fighting back beyond just your campaign.
Buffalo is a union town. It's a blue collar town. I'm super proud of the work that's being done by our Starbucks baristas. They are going to potentially be the first unionized Starbucks of 9,000 stores in that chain. And the healthcare workers over at Mercy Hospital are fighting for basic decency. They have a CEO who's bringing home $1.5 million a year while they're, taking unsafe assignments with staffing ratios that are not conducive to the care that they want to give their patients, quality care. But I think Buffalo is still unique in that we have a pretty high density of union labor as opposed to other areas of the country. And a lot of that translates right into this campaign. I think that when people are used to being the people who do the work, they don't mind doing it. So, we won the primary election, unseated a 16-year incumbent with all of the advantages and all of the money and all of the staff. And we did it with a 100% volunteer campaign. Folks who were going and putting in 8 hours on the job and then putting in another 4 to make sure that we made it over the finish line, and who are continuing to do so.
I wanted to ask you also, it seems to me, when you look at Byron Brown, when you look at the real estate developers, there are Republicans that are getting involved to try and support him. Uh, they seem awfully scared of you, despite, I don't know, I mean, the most radical thing I heard was a 3% tax increase to, I mean, go towards really, really underfunded social services. I think I know the answer, but I mean, obviously, you're seeing a lot of Republican buy-in for Brown. Kind of the media here doesn't seem particularly fond. Well, they'll cover you, but from what I've seen, it's been more favorable towards the mayor. What exactly are they so scared of you for?
I'm still struggling to figure that out. I would assume that folks get afraid when the advantages that they enjoy are being threatened. And I'm going to level the playing field, and people are not going to have preferential treatment, and I am not going to continue to ignore the forgotten. And it's unfortunate that there is such an anti-India campaign being mounted. And when I say anti-India, it's not because these folks are against anything that I stand for or believe in. It's legitimately against me personally, right? Like the my opponent is running a campaign and he's telling people, vote for me because at least I'm not her. Right? There's no plan he's presenting to move us forward. There's no plan to make things better for people. It's just vote for me because I'm not her. She is inexperienced. She is radical. And I believe that the voters of Buffalo see right through that. We have 16 years of a failed administration that has failed to address childhood lead poisoning, that has failed to address poverty, that has failed to address redlining in neighborhoods of color, that has failed to address basic infrastructure like sidewalks and streets and striping in the streets and crosswalks. And I mean, the list goes on and on and on and on. Byron Brown has had his turn, and unfortunately, his time is up.
I wanted to ask you because he was very, very, I think, kind of condescending. Like, where's her resume? She doesn't have the experience. I don't know. I mean, your life story is pretty compelling in terms of experience. I was listening to an interview where, I mean, with your newborn twins, you had to get on the bus with them attached to you, and oxygen and all these wires and stuff, literally taking your twins on the bus for an appointment. Can you kind of talk about, to me, it's kind of backwards. I mean, he's got a lot of experience in patronage and corruption, in my view, and you've got actually. I mean, you're literally during this campaign driving DoorDash, doing deliveries. Can you kind of talk about your experience, and what do you respond that you don't have the experience?
I mean, the struggle is what makes us stronger. I don't have a lifetime of government experience because I've worked actual jobs where I've been a member of a union, where I've worked a 9 to 5 and then come home and cooked and done homework with my children without a full staff to support me in doing that. And I think that matters because I have a perspective that I'm going to bring into City Hall that is going to help me make decisions that are going to be to the benefit for the many of us who are working class. And aside from that, I'm a professional registered nurse. I have been trained to identify problems, to plan to solve them, to implement those solutions, and then to evaluate them to see what works and what doesn't. And in addition to that, I'm a coalition builder. I am a nonprofit executive. I'm a person who spent 39 years living in the city of Buffalo. So I have plenty of expertise. And I think that this campaign is proof that we need to reevaluate who we believe is equipped to lead. And it's a new day. And this is the era of working class people. This is the era of leadership from women, from mothers, from everyday average people who are so close to the problems that we know what the solutions are. We know what we need where we live, and it's time that we honor that.
Something you kind of said in an interview that stood out to me, basically saying progressives have become a little bit too I mean, I guess demanding wokeness. Um, Bigger picture, Nina Turner's campaign, for example, I covered that in Cleveland. And you have this portion of the left that thinks the problem that candidates aren't winning or whatever is because they're not going scorched earth enough on the Democratic Party. And I was kind of like, listen, I mean, wouldn't we all like to go scorched earth on the Democratic Party, Biden? But you kind of, I mean, in a pretty pro Biden area, I'm talking about Cleveland where she was running. I mean, you can't just try and enforce your ideology and just knock on doors and expect to just radicalize people in the span of a 6-month campaign. And a lot of people don't like that. They think, no, we have to, even if it means losing, we have to, just bash the Democratic Party, this and that. I wanted to ask you because, frankly, most people you're knocking on doors are not like hardcore progressives. They probably don't even have time to watch much news or politics. They probably, if it's working class black people, have never had the opportunity to like be that picky. A lot of people I've interviewed, they voted based on survival. What do you think in general in terms of progressives? Like each race is different, but do you believe you kind of have to kind of tweak your message depending on where you are, and you can't expect people to be as maybe left or socialist as you?
I think that we have to appeal to the broader electorate, right? There are some people in the progressive movement who have the privilege of being allowed to fail, right? And I would say that as a black woman, as a mother, as a working class person who literally sacrificed every single thing that I have to run this race, I can't afford to lose because, I'm so progressively pure and inflexible and unwilling to compromise that I wind up with nothing when this is over. I don't have a plan B. And if I'm not going to win this election, then I can't successfully help bring forth the change that we've all been fighting for. If we keep losing because we think that these I won't even say super progressive, just these highly intellectualized arguments that we're trying to have at the polls are not always winning. There has to be more organizing done. And just because you and I understand what the issues are does not mean that the average voter goes to the poll and understands what it is that we're trying to explain, that we have spent decades, debating amongst ourselves, and now we are trying to make it appeal to a broader electorate with just a few words, and it doesn't
Right.
it doesn't land the way that we want it to always. So what I tell my people is we have to win first. Right. Yes, we can pull what is politically feasible further left, but we have to win first. At this point, at this stage in the game, the power that we wield is in protest. The power that we wield is in our opinions, but what we have to do is we have to convert that into political power. And we've seen it work in the legislative branches. We see city council people who are progressive being elected. We have Congress people now, and for the first time in a half century, we have an opportunity to elect a progressive executive who has influence over budgets. And has the ability to implement participatory budgeting and co-governance and really lead with the deeply democratic principles that we're all fighting for. But again, gotta win first.
Well, I also think what you said is important because there are YouTube hosts and people out there who would be like, see, she's already selling out. But the reality is you have a choice. You could either kind of meet people where they are, or you could meet people where they are, or live on your purity island in a minority, because that's really what you're talking about. If you're not going to try and tweak your message here and there, if you have to compromise, not giving away the farm, but obviously you wouldn't be a dictator.
I can't live on a purity island. The message that I promote and what I'm running on are things that would appeal to a person like me. I am not moderate by any means, but I still have the challenges of folks who are disadvantaged, right? And I think that while we're talking about progressivism, we have to address the nuances and complexities that are involved at the intersection of race, of gender, of sexual orientation, of class, right? And there are challenges that I face that a lot of my counterparts who I'm having some of these discussions with don't. Right? I'm the mother of 4 Black boys. And if I'm not concerned about the police murdering them, I'm concerned about their peers murdering them. So I can not only address an issue of policing, I have to address issues of broader community safety and how we reduce violent crime overall. And that means affordable housing, quality education, healthcare, quality jobs, you name it, right? Also, just thinking about health outcomes in our community, thinking about the built environment, thinking about pedestrian safety for my mobility challenged grandmother and things like that. Like my worldview informs how I make decisions and how I choose to pursue policy, with justice in all of its forms being the North Star, but knowing that it's a process that gets us there.
Where could people find out more, and do you need more support? Obviously, it's a local election, but there's no presidential or congressional races, so if people want to get involved, they can.
We are now officially 7 days out. The election is next Tuesday, and folks can go to our website at www.indiawalton.com. There you can donate. You can sign up to volunteer. We phone bank virtually, so you can do it from anywhere in the country. And I just think this is an exciting and interesting race to watch, so I just encourage folks to stay tuned.
Thank you very much. 1 week away, like she said, we'll be here through Election Day. Thank you for watching. We'll be back tomorrow. There's a lot going on in Buffalo. I don't know what we're covering tomorrow, but we'll definitely be covering India Walton's